evening, everybody, and welcome to another session of the Explore More Travel Sundown discussions. The sun is set once again. It's about 7 o'clock in the evening, and I would love to welcome Richard McMartin, one of the co-founders and race director of the Torpedo SwimRun series here in South Africa. Richard, welcome, my bud.
Hello, Warren. It's we've been in lockdown for what feels like an eternity, and to be sitting here now at the end of the day with a glass of wine, it's great to be joining you.
Yeah,
and it's great to be talking about swimrun. Thanks.
Absolutely. I think we've all the athletes sitting on the couches across South Africa and Cape Town in particular are chomping at the bit to get out there and have another swimrun event. Yeah. So we can only hope sooner rather than later. Someone told me today that it's day 70 of lockdown, which is just crazy.
I think the scary thing is the reality. It feels like probably a factor of that. It feels like day 140 or.
Yeah. No,
it's been a tough run.
It has, but I think the good news is that things are progressively changing for the better, and we all just need to be patient, and we're going to be doing some events really soon. I'm excited to finally chat to you about Torpedo, and it's something that we've really grown really passionate about over the last 2 years. So yeah, maybe Rich, you can give us a little idea of your background in the sports industry and tell us what Torpedo is all about.
So when lockdown ended, we saw South Africans go crazy for two things. They're all questioning when are bottle stores going to open to get themselves a beer or a glass of wine. And the second thing, they're all wanting to know, when are beaches going to open? When can we go surfing at Muizenberg? And I suppose I fall under that same category. I've been sports mad for most of my life. And I've been lucky to be both a participant and really enjoy sport from a participant for a few decades. And then also I've been lucky to call it the place that I work for the last 16 or 17 years. Mm. But I thought just as a useful intro, just to give a background of two sports that have sort of made a big impact on me. And the first is paddling. So I grew up in Durban, and for about 20 years of my life, myself and all my paddling buddies, we used to travel around the country, and we used to find every river that we could paddle and find every bit of ocean that we could paddle. And it was this fantastic adventure and this fantastic sport that we really loved. Mm. And why I wanted to bring up paddling is that, there's a spectrum of sports. And on the one side, there's adventure, and adventure, so let's put surfing or rock climbing into that spectrum of sport. And then on the other side of the spectrum of sport, there is endurance, and you could put sort of like road running or track running or Ironman. And on the adventure side, I suppose it's generally it's immersed in nature, and athletes are doing it not only for the sport, but they're doing it very much for this like full mind and body experience, to be out in nature and having this really good time. They're not doing it, to race someone or be against the clock. So that's on the one side. And then on the other side, there's, for example, sports that are very much against the clock, road running and triathlon. And there's nothing wrong with either of these sports. I've participated in both of them, and I've loved both of them. But why I found paddling so interesting was that it completely blurred this line. It's not either or. You could have this scenario where you experience and you love a sport because it's both adventure and endurance. Some of the races in South Africa, there's these beautiful rivers, and for example, there's this big surf ski race we used to do, the PE to London. You're out in the ocean between PE to London, and it's wild. You're in the nature, and you're at wind and the rain and the swell. But there's this whole adventure side to it. But then there's, if I remember, day one is about 70 kilometers long. So there's this extreme endurance side of it as well. So you're getting like both sides of the spectrum. And I think that was an important, growing up enjoying paddling was an important part of where my love and now my passion of swimrun has come from. Because swimrun very much extends that of blurring this line between adventure and endurance. And then another sport that I suppose has made a big impact on me is cycling. So I was lucky in early 2005, I joined the Cape Epic team. So Kevin he was the founder, he had just started the race. And, the Cape Epic, I was there for over a decade. It became this huge, big international race. And I think the takeaway there for me was that South Africa is this incredible destination for internationals to come and participate in sports events. We've got, the currencies on our side. We've got these sports crazy, friendly, sports loving people. And also, and the main point is we've just got the most beautiful natural environment to do these outdoor races. So I think, I've done all sports, but probably paddling and cycling is my sporting background.
We're very lucky with what we have in terms of mountains and sea and forests, and then obviously great infrastructure. So our roads are good, our gravel roads are good. So it lends itself to all types of sports. So sports promoter and sports event organizers paradise, really.
No, you're definitely right with that. Yeah.
So Torpedo, then you co-founded Torpedo. How many years have you been involved in that? Has it been what?
Yeah, so the Torpedo story, it was about 4 years ago we hosted our first race, but rewinding a bit past that, one of my old friends who had done a lot of paddling and he was at that point living in London and I suppose he would classify himself as probably a triathlete. He was big into Ironman. He went over and did a race called the Otillo. And he came back and told me, he said, wow, you have to check the sport out. I've just had the most incredible weekend. It sounds wacky. We swam in our running shoes and we ran in wetsuits. It sounds wacky, but it was this most amazing experience. It was hard. It was tough. It was adventure. It was everything. It was the full sporting experience for me. And this came from a guy. His name was Nick Hovman. Came from a guy that he had been around the block with sports. So I went in and checked it out, and I thought, wow, if there's any place to host races like this, South Africa has got the most amazing waterways. It's got the most amazing oceans around it, and it's got the most amazing rivers. So that was about 4 years ago. We started putting together this idea, this plan. Is it possible? Can we host a swimrun race in Cape Town? And I suppose that was the start of the company called Torpedo SwimRun, and we hosted and brought, it's myself and it's an organization is always compromises many people. So we got a great team. There's myself and Rob that put a lot of effort into it, but then there's a whole host of other partners and people that work for us. So we've built up a bit of momentum now over 4 years.
Cool. I know the Otillo guys are, amazing organizers in the Nordic, and now they have events all over Europe. So, they have thousands and thousands of athletes participating on an annual basis. And it's swimrun, relatively new sport in South Africa. So you guys have done events now for the last 3 to 4 years, and it's definitely growing. Maybe you can take us through, some of the events, maybe your initial events in Cape Town. How does that event work and look like?
Yeah, so just to touch on that growth of swimrun. So Otillo were the founders of the sport, and their original race, the Otillo, it's over 70 Ks. It's island hopping. There's multiple islands and multiple swims and runs that you travel from, and it is an unbelievably tough race. It got a cult following amongst the people that had done it, but it was very hard, and it was only for this one's called them the nutters of sport. It was so tough. It was for such a small minority. But then they started introducing sprint races, and with these shorter races, the sport exploded. So it went from Sweden to the rest of Scandinavia to Europe. It's gone across to the States, and it's down in Australia and New Zealand. So it's really seen this global surge. So when we brought it to South Africa, we thought, our dream in those early days was we have to do a race at the foot of Table Mountain along the Atlantic coast. You know, that was the dream for us. If we could make that work, we thought that would be, you know, that would be the ultimate race route. It's in winter, in summer, it's, you know, it's 30 degrees outside the water, but the water in Cape Town, for those watching from Europe that don't know, it's cold even by your standards. You know, often the water gets down to 7.5, 8 degrees. I'd say the average is normally 11, 12, 13 degrees, but that's still extremely cold water. So it's this wild ride. You know, if you could say, if we could traverse these beaches and bays of Cape Town. And then an interesting thing, you know, when we started coming up with this Cape Town race course, is that the route from, you know, we go from Llandudno to Clifton, which is along the Atlantic seaboard. That's a route that everyone knows so well. Everyone knows, and everyone's driven it. Everyone thinks they know it so well. But the fascinating thing that we found out when we did that first tour of the route, and, you know, we invited 6 people along with us, and we tested the route, was, wow, there are so many hidden little coves and beaches, and the experience is so vastly different to what you would have thought along the Cape Town coastline. So it's a real unexpected surprise to the upside for everyone that does the Cape Town route. But I've got, you know, there's a lot of people that are listening and they're wondering, what is SwimRun? I've got a couple of, you know, I think if I can just share my screen here and show some footage of the Cape Town SwimRun. So this is a video of Cape from 2018, and it will just give you a bit of an idea what it is. So, you know, the concept of SwimRun is that there are multiple swims and multiple runs. So you're racing along a stretch of coastline, so either the ocean or inland rivers or waterways, and there's no transition. So there's no transition between the swim and the run. So in traditional multi-sports, you know, triathlon, for example, you would swim and then you would change your clothes into riding clothes, and you hop on your bike and you do the ride, and then you change into running clothes and you run. So SwimRun is a self-supported journey experience along the race course, where there's no changing clothes from start to finish. And it, you know, again, as I started with, when my friend Nick told me about it, you know, it sounds wacky, swimming in your running shoes and running in your wetsuit, but when you actually do it, and you know, for those of you listening, we'll bring it out of Warren just now, but he's done multiple of all of our races across the country. It's, you know, the experience is probably not as wacky as you would imagine, and it's actually quite a pure sport. You know, swimming and running was, you know, the original way of sort of traversing over the land. So it's this really fantastic experience. And here you see they're running over. This is Camps Bay, and they're going to go past the Glen, and then, you know, onto the finish at Clifton.
But here's some of the coves and some of the rock features that you would normally not go to as a visitor. And that's something you mentioned a short while ago, and I completely agree with you. You know, I'm a Cape Townian, so I know the coastline really well, and we used to go surfing at Llandudno and Sandy Bay and the Glen, and even I haven't gone all the way along the coast from Llandudno to Clifton, and there were so many little beautiful coves, like just incredible, and you don't see them from the road, and they're private. So this race does take you along some of the most spectacular coastline in the world. And I'm a little biased because obviously I'm Cape Townian, but it's incredibly special.
And then let me stop there, and let's keep talking about. I suppose we're onto the Torpedo races. So
yeah,
it's a new sport, and you know, when you launch a new sport, or to make a sport, let's say, you can't only have one race. You can't only have an extremely tough race or an extremely easy race. You need to build up a whole spectrum of races to suit all sorts of athletes. So we started a hunt around the country of, you know, Cape Town worked really well. Where can we go next, and where could be really exciting for the athletes? And that search brought us to a town called Wilderness, which is about 3 or 4 hours up the garden route of Cape Town. And what I'm going to show you in a little clip here. This was the terrain that when we saw this, we really thought, wow, you know, this clinched it. This is where the venue the second Torpedo SwimRun was going to be, and this is Torpedo SwimRun Wild, which is a 28-kilometer race from George to Wilderness on the East Coast.
I mean, the Caimans is just truly spectacular. So as you said, it's not too far from Cape Town, but it's completely different terrain, beautiful dark water rivers, and then obviously some incredible coastline too.
Yeah, so Wilderness was the first time that we brought a swim run away. So there's actually no swim, although we run along the ocean for a while in Wilderness, most of the swims are inland. And that again opens up to a whole different type of athletes. So a lot of athletes are very nervous of the swimming in Cape Town and the sea. So this was, this is all in rivers and dams. And so the section you just saw was the Caimans, and that takes you from George to the ocean, and you arrive at this beautiful old, let me just turn down the bottom there, this beautiful old historic Caimans train bridge that you run across. And, there's not many sports. I suppose, one of the keys of swimming is there not many sports where you can experience these deep ravines and running over these amazing train bridges, and then running along the beach and swimming across big dams and lakes. It really opens up any terrain to the route, and that's a route builder's dream. To have a sport that you can travel over almost any terrain. So this is when they come off the Caimans and they've just reached the Caimans River mouth, and this is looking over the Indian Ocean, which there's about a 10-kilometer run across the beach there.
That's beautiful, isn't it? One thing we haven't mentioned is that it is a team event, which is something a bit different. Obviously, a lot of the adventure sports, maybe some of the other long distance cycling and mountain biking events are generally individual. So this is a two-man or two-woman or mixed team event.
So yeah, I'll pause talking about the races there after Wilderness, and let's go into that element of what you need and if it's two-man or one-man. So we've split our races into two different categories. We've got the black logo races, which are really tough, hard races. So that's Cape Town and Wilderness. And those races it's a safety element, but it's also an element of when you're going along this extraordinary coastline, you want to experience it with someone. So I think those are the two reasons why it's a team event. So this is just, an example of this is a swim run team. This is the kit that you do swim run in. So it's a wetsuit. These guys are this guy and girl, extremely brave. They're doing it in a short wetsuit. This is Cape Town. So, the water on that day was about 11, 12 degrees. They're very brave. Yeah. But, so the key elements are your shoes and your wetsuit, but you are allowed swim aids. So there you can see they've got a pool buoy, which helps you immensely when you swim. It keeps your feet up and out of the water. And they've also got hand paddles, which helps you pull through the water. It minimizes the effect of the drag of your shoes. So that's quite a good look at sort of the kit you can use. And this team here is using a swim run pull rope between them, which the rules of a team event in cycling and all sort of team events are you generally have to stay within a certain distance of your teammate. So using a pull rope just helps the teammates stay together. So that's the kit you use. And then so back to our races, we had done now 2 races. So we've done Cape Town, and we've done Wild, which was up in Wilderness. And it became clear to us that it had piqued a lot of interest. We were lucky in the early years, and we had great growth in the sport. But there was lots of people saying, we're dying to do this. We're dying to experience swim run, but I don't want to swim in Cape Town. The water's freezing. I'm scared of the waves, and sure, I can't do 28 Ks up in Wilderness. So how do we take part in this event? So we introduced blue logo races. So our first Torpedo Val de Vie. So Val de Vie is this lovely estate just outside of Cape Town. So we introduced a blue logo race, and a blue logo is an individual race. So you don't need a partner. And it's also a lot shorter. And then the conditions that you're facing on that day is not nearly as scary, if you want to say it, as our black logo races. So, the swims at Val de Vie are all, I'll play the video and talk in the background. The swims at Val de Vie are all in these really forgiving and warm dams. You don't need a wetsuit. It's individual. And we were blown away so we did our first Val de Vie in 2019, and we did our second one this year. And we had, we had 100. I think we were almost up at, we were over sort of 400 people that joined us at Val de Vie this year. So it showed that there was a lot of people keen to get into the sport, and they needed these easier races to get into the sport. And then that took us up to our last race, which was Torpedo Moon, which I actually don't have any footage of, but that's, Gauteng and Johannesburg is sort of the largest area of athletes in South Africa, and it was always very much part of the Torpedo plan to go up to Joburg and host a race up there. So we found this. It's a small little game reserve, and there are there's zebra and there's giraffe and there are elephants, and there's quite a few sort of wild animals around the reserve, and there's this beautiful dam and beautiful river that we can swim in. So we had another blue logo race up in Joburg. So at the moment we've got that's 5 races around the country.
Before we go on, maybe you can just show that that image of your map of Cape Town, your little route map.
Yeah. So
so this is from the start to the finish. Distance wise, what are we looking at in Cape Town?
So Cape Town is 16 kilometers from start to finish, and if there are internationals who are going to watch this and they are into swimrun, they are all going to think, wow, that's extremely short. The Tiller is over 70, almost 80 Ks, and a lot of their races are 30, 40, 50, 60 Ks. So 16 Ks sounds very short. I suppose I would add with a bit of a smile that, it's definitely, it's a tougher 16 Ks, I think, than you could imagine. The sea is colder. It's rougher. There's kelp that you fight through. There's quite a bit of climbs on the runs. It's a far more adventurous 16 Ks than I think they probably would imagine. And just to just name some of the names of these swims, and all of them are quite famous beaches and bays of Cape Town. So the first swim is in Sandy Bay. Sandy Bay is definitely one of the hidden gems of Cape Town, and it's a nudist beach. And then Ladudno, it's world famous surf break. On the left, there's, there can be very hollow, steep, big waves on the left. We come in slightly on the right of the beach, but still the waves can be pretty big. Oudekraal, it's just this lovely swim across Oudekraal. It's 1,300 meters. There's a couple of shipwrecks that you swim over. And, looking up at the top of the screen, I'm not sure if you can see my mouse on the screen here, but looking up at the top of the screen, that's Table Mountain. So you're definitely under this beautiful, iconic 12 apostles of Table Mountain. And the whole race, from when you leave Sandy Bay and you're heading towards the end of the race, you're aiming the whole time for Lion's Head, another famous landmark in Cape Town. So Lion's Head is always in front of you, and that's the direction that you're going. And then the fourth swim is across Buckhoven Bay. The fifth swim, probably Cape Town's most famous beach, Camps Bay. And then the last swim into Clifton. So it's a real tour of Cape Town.
Yeah. And then time wise, the winners and the guys that are herring off to beat their personal times every year, they do it in around 2 hours or so. And what's your cutoff time? So is there an opportunity for your sort of weekend warrior to be involved? Are you strict on times, or are you interested in having people that just want to really get out and have fun?
So just talking quickly about the leaders. So we've attracted some really top athletes. We've had the top there's been a bit of a race in swimrun in South Africa. It's between the top triathletes and the top surfers. The triathletes are fitter and faster, but the surfers can read the sort of natural environment a bit better. So there's this interesting sort of dynamic which forms. The triathletes normally win Cape Town, and the lifesavers win wilderness. But so yeah, the leaders did it in under 2 hours, but the back markers, they got up to about midday to do it. We, whilst we are fairly lenient with the cutoff is very lenient. And whilst we don't want to cut everyone off, and we want to be actually very inclusive, so we want teams that are not super fit athletes. We want them to come in and experience it and enjoy it. We do have to have cutoffs, and we do enforce them very strictly, although they're very lenient. But it's very much a safety issue. We need to keep everyone safe out en route, so we do have cutoffs that we do enforce.
Yeah, cool. I mean, it's the most awesome race. So I think just for people that are listening, as Rich mentioned, I've been very lucky to do a couple of the races. So I first heard of it through a friend of mine who was involved in Red Bull, and he participated with his girlfriend. And I looked at this and I was like, oh, this is something that I think I could do, even though I wasn't really a runner or a swimmer, but I loved surfing. And chatted to a friend of mine and got him involved. And the next thing, we were entered, and I think we may have bitten off a little bit too much the first year, but we really, really enjoyed it. And all of a sudden, from a person who's lived in Cape Town his whole life, I started doing more swimming in the ocean and more running along the coastline. And it's crazy that we haven't done these sort of things years and years ago. But anyway, now I'm a true convert and I'm absolutely hooked. My girlfriend and I enter as a team, and we find to do it together is just truly spectacular, because you're there pushing each other in the natural environment and in a place where a lot of people don't go to do events, to do swimming or running. So this sort of event is really, it caters for everybody, not only your hardcore athletes that are training year in, year out for these amazing events. And that's what I really liked about it. Pre and post, you're mingling with athletes that are top triathletes, and then guys that have entered an endurance adventure race for the first time, and they are like so excited. You can see it in their eyes. They firstly think, are they crazy to have entered this? But they're so amped to do something so special. So it's really, really cool. And I think we're onto something in South Africa with these swim run races. And I'm pretty confident once the Europeans start coming out to try them, they're going to get hooked and come year in, year out. I think you touched on a very important point. Yes, the Cape Town event is on the shorter side. However, we've got some opportunities where you can come out and do a training camp with either members of the Torpedo SwimRun team or some of our contacts in the sport industry. So come out and do some trail running in Cape Town, because our trails in the Table Mountain area are truly world class. So come out and trail run, come out and swim in the Atlantic Ocean, maybe do the Robben Island swim, which you did last year for the first time. And I mean, you can give us your thoughts on that. It's an incredible experience.
So, I think when people travel over here, and let's say they're here for 2 weeks and they're spending a week in Cape Town, if they're an adventure or sport-minded person, I know that Warren and I would be biased, so take it with a pinch of salt. But Cape Town is the sporting mecca of adventure sports. There's so many great things to do, and I just want to show. Let me share my screen once more quickly. We will do tours of the route for athletes that come over to participate, but we will also take them on on special guided tours. So this was a tour that we did last year. So this is a stretch of coast between Hout Bay Harbour and Sandy Bay. It's past like the Sentinel, where the big wave surfing happens, dungeons in Cape Town. And it's this really excluded, most amazing part of coastline that you'll be swimming on next to the Boss shipwreck. And it's, so we will custom make, packages like that to swim Robben Island. So the famous Robben Island where Nelson Mandela was imprisoned. It's about a 7.5K swim. I did it last year. It's the most fantastic experience. Derek Fraser, who does our water safety for Torpedo Torpedo Cape. He organizes the tours, so we all, we can help facilitate that, which I think it's, if you're an open water swimmer anywhere around the world, I think that's one of the swims that you'd want to tick off your list. So that's the sporting aspect of what you can do in Cape Town. But then, Warren and his team can peg on to the sporting trip, the most amazing, trip up the coast to game reserves and so on. So there's really a great experience to be had.
Yeah, I think just touching on that, South Africa is a fantastic destination for those who haven't been here. We have great combinations in terms of travel, and Explore More Travel over the years is focused on unique wine, golf, and safari experiences in Southern Africa. And as we've developed our business, we've now got into the adventure markets. I'm super keen on the Torpedo, and I love surfing and the trails. And then Adam is a very keen mountain biker. So we've developed packages, and we've got the right contacts on the ground to help our clients, really come and do these incredible events. And my aim, obviously, after COVID-19, which has been a little stumbling block, but after things do turn, we want to get European athletes out here for 10 days to 2 weeks to come and run in the mountains and possibly, do some mountain biking, swim in the oceans, and we'll facilitate on the ground and do some tours, and we'll do some pre-race tours too, which is important, I think, for people that don't know the coastline. So get in the water, jump off the rocks, get a feel for what it's all about. And then on race day, Richard, you and your team obviously do a great job, and the route is well signposted, and you've got everybody pointing everybody in the right direction, and it's really run properly. So I think for Europeans, we are really going to be pushing hard in the next year or so to boost the international entries. For Cape Town in particular, because we feel Cape Town is one of the most amazing cities in the world. And from Cape Town, you can do add-on trips to safari experiences. Gondwana Game Reserve is only 4 hours drive from Cape Town. The Kruger National Park is only a 2.5-hour flight. So we really can tick off all the boxes, which is, I think, super exciting for European and any international sports lover. So yeah, it's definitely exciting times. I mean, we have this little thing called COVID-19, which is causing some havoc. At the moment, Rich, we're not going to predict what's happening for the rest of the year, but let's hope that things do turn, and hopefully we can have the locals participate in your event towards the end of the year. Your thoughts on that? If we got some locals listening to this, are we going to have some events later this year?
And an interesting point with with sport and COVID, so there's a lot of very popular sports in South Africa with huge numbers, and we're very proud of them. They're great sports. I think what's going to happen in the next couple of months, the next couple of years, is that COVID is going to give an opportunity to the likes of SwimRun, where there's smaller numbers. It's easier to social distance, and especially sports like SwimRun, where you're in and out of the ocean the whole time. We're very confident that we're going to be able to hold Cape Town either this year, or if we delay it to an earlier date next year. But there's one thing that we definitely won't do, is we're not going to cancel a race and not give back entry fees or anything like that. We'd always roll them across to the following year, or discuss with the athletes what they need. But no, we're confident that we're at the end of this year, we'll be able to, it might just be for local athletes, but we'll be able to host our torpedoes.
Cool. Yeah, I think from my side, my feeling is that the people that do travel after COVID-19, like right away, are going to be those adventure enthusiasts. So they're the guys that are going to hop on a plane and bring their bikes and want to come and swim and do some interesting activities, because they've all been locked up at home, wherever they are. And we all love to travel. I think that's not going to change. It's a stumbling block for sure. But it's a good opportunity for us to focus on the adventure market and really get people out here to experience South Africa in all its glory, because we've got a ton of great events, and we cater for all types of sports. So,
and
yeah,
we've also got, which I'm enjoying right now, but we've got amazing wine farms.
We do.
You got so much to see and do.
Yeah, we're very lucky. I'm actually drinking a craft beer from South Africa, because over lockdown we've absolutely smashed my wine stock. but in wintertime, a nice dark ale, you can't really go wrong. And you are right. In Cape Town, we've got the Constantia winelands just outside the city, and then Stellenbosch and Franschhoek are only 45 minutes to an hour away. And even pre-Torpedo, we can definitely organize, half-day wine experiences to go and taste these wonderful wines that we're very fortunate to have. So yeah, we have it all, but obviously I am slightly biased. But we'll be pushing hard, definitely post COVID-19. And my feeling is in the next couple of months, things will turn and start opening up, and then we can be discussing the event, especially the Cape Town event, with the Nordic markets and some of the European markets. We've had some awesome discussions with some of the guys in Scandinavia, and I was very fortunate to meet Fanny, who's the world champion, one of the world champs, and she was very enthusiastic about what we have to offer. So we'll definitely be pushing hard going forward, that's for sure. Maybe just to end off, I think from my side, for the locals that are watching this and you're excited about potentially trying something new, then please reach out to Richard and his team, or make contact with me, and we can give you a good idea of what it's all about and what it costs and what you need. I've got some of the caps from the races that we've done, the wetsuits that we've got made. We had these made in Cape Town by Coral Wetsuits, and amazing quality stuff, locally made, and they're very, very helpful, and you can get something made up in like a week that's custom fit. So really cool. And don't be scared to participate. It's an event that I believe anybody can actually enter and succeed at. If you can run 3 or 4 Ks, and you can run and you can swim 200, 300 meters, then you can do swim run, because it just takes a little bit of training. Get off the couch and go and do it. And Rich and his team, they can also help with that pre-event. All the lifesavers down at Dudno were incredibly helpful to ourselves before we did the event, and the guys are always on standby to give advice and help you get through these events. So cool. So Rich, going forward, hopefully we can have some events later this year. But yeah, I think from my side, huge thanks to your team for putting on these outstanding events. And we're looking forward to having a massive 2021 and getting internationals and locals to your events and filling them up. Thanks, Warren, and thanks so much for having me on tonight, and as always for your great support of SwimRun. Cool, it's a pleasure. I think what we'll do is at the end of this YouTube video, I'm going to edit some of the clips from your races and just put them at the end of the YouTube clip. And then everybody who's watching, you can just stay online and watch the Cape Town race, the wilderness race, which is called the Wild, truly amazing. And even if we've got some guys from the Gauteng area that are interested in the Moon, we'll put a little clip or some images of that race too. Cool, Rich, looking forward to seeing you in the water soon, my bud. It's been awesome chatting to you about Torpedo. Yeah, thanks again for your time. Cheers, Warren. Thank you. Cool. Cheers, man. Bye.
Sundowner.